All right, folks. This is Scott with the Game Audio Institute, and I am here with our special, awesome guest, Chase Bethea, a freelance indie composer in game music and game audio as well. And yeah, so basically, we've had a few of these already available. You can go to our YouTube channel and check out previous speedruns. But Chase is an NYX award-winning and VGMO nominated freelance composer, technical audio designer for video games and a variety of other media. He's been working professionally in the industry for 11 years, has shipped over 21 games this far. In his beginning career, he worked as an intern in Mobitori Games in 2011 while simultaneously going to school for his AA in music theory and composition. He graduated from his AA with audio engineering from Los Angeles Recording School and his AA music theory and composition from Moorpark College, and his BM in media composition from California State Northridge with all honors. That's all the school and academic stuff. And he's basically been doing a bunch of stuff in all kinds of things. He's nominated for Best Music and Motion Graphic and Poetry Awards in 2010. He won a score for the flash horror game I Can't Escape. He did received an honorable mention in the Indie Game Magazine. He's also appeared as many guest speaker, literally within the last 2 or 3 weeks in several different things. The Global Game Jam, he's done things. He's done things on GDC. He's certainly done things on GameSoundCon at the Berklee College of Music, Game Devs of Color, Audio Developers Conference, A2M, the Indie Game Business, and A-Post Gaming. And when he's not working busy on project, he enjoys watching anime, as do I, cruising up to Ventura, and hiking. I also like to go to Ventura when I was in LA. And he loves, I like this bit here, the refurbishing games and fixing retro game consoles. I'll have to ask you about that a bit. But anyway, the basic format here is I'm going to ask a bit about his background and stuff. Of course, I've actually known Chase now for about a decade or close. And he has shown up pretty regularly for most of these sorts of, industry events and things like that, which is kind of what you want to do if you want to break into the event. You hang out and, meet people and talk about, hey, how do I do this? And, what did you find was useful to know and things like that. Anyway, so, and without any further ado, we're just going to welcome Chase to the thing.
Hello. Thank you so much, Scott, for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'm Chase Bethea, as Scott says, and yeah, happy to be here.
Cool. So as I always say, I mean, and from my perspective, I ended up like coming into games very, very late. I was a Macintosh game player, which meant that I didn't play games. So, I didn't get into games until I was literally asked to write a course in games. And that is a bit on the rare side. Usually if I go to GDC, somebody has already been like into games from the get-go when they were literally sitting on their father's lap playing Nintendo, So I was kind of curious if you came from that kind of background overall or not.
Yeah, so my background is mostly, I've grew up with games all my life as a game player first. So I found even a system underneath my grandmother's bed. She thought it was a fax machine and it turns out to be an Intellivision. And I figured out how to hook that up on my own.
Intellivision was your first?
Because it was technically my first that I had discovered without knowing that it was what it was. And I hooked it up myself. I was good with electronics when I'm talking about like first or second grade.
Yeah, it looks a bit like a VCR. I mean, you got these little paddles that have like numbers on them and stuff like that, and you dial, and you're like, what the heck does that? It looks like a remote control.
Yeah, I asked her and she's like, I think it's a fax machine. And I look at the box, I see little pictures and I see like a soccer game.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like, I think this is something else. So Dragonfire, I think, was the first game I had ever played, even without knowing what it was. And then Game Boy is my first system that I played.
Okay.
And
so it's the first thing you owned was a Game Boy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Game Boy. I would have to say my first game audio experience was on the Game Boy camera when selfies were initially first invented in that respect too. And there's a 4-channel thing and you can make little tunes. And so that was my first experience into game audio without knowing, again, just that what I was doing.
Yeah. You were just like, hey, I can do this thing. I mean, so it was an app you had to buy, or was it?
No, on the Game Boy camera, you could take pictures and it's this little game and it has mini games. And then within it, if you do a specific type of space and Space Invader type of game. You get a high score, it unlocks this DJ thing.
Yeah.
And the DJ usually just like you take a picture and you do little funny faces. But then underneath the hood, you can actually create your own tune with wavetable and patterns.
It was like
and
it was like a tracker.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
tracker inside of it. And
tracker.
so I was making music on that and then doing the little DJ scratch thing in there. And then I moved on to Sega Genesis and PlayStation, and had N64 as well. So I had always been playing games since I was 6 years old or
Yeah.
5 years old.
Got it. Wow, that's amazing. That's incredible. Like in terms of like the age situation. I'm kind of curious. The camera thing was a separate device that hooked into the
No,
was it
so
mounted directly onto the.
yeah, it's
Okay.
designed to just slot in as a normal Game Boy cartridge. The
swap in it.
peripheral of the as a like a 180 turn of the camera, so you can face it as
Got
if like a normal phone, right? You have their front facing and then you have
Yeah.
the back facing. And this is in 1996, 97.
Wow.
And so the only extra peripheral was the printer. And if back then you could go to Blockbuster and print out what you actually took pictures of. And that was the peripheral of what you could do.
Wow. Okay. And so this is probably a slightly more advanced Game Boy than the original '89 Game Boy, right?
The Game Boy camera cartridge, because it's promoted as a game, so it's not a Game Boy. The '89 Game Boy, and then there was the Pocket, then there was the Color, and I think this came out around between just before the Color and right around the Pocket, with this,
Okay.
if I recall.
Got it. Because I was kind of curious about that. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, of course, and I have to ask all these clueless questions because I'm sure there are like other people who are like, oh yeah, I totally had that when I was,
No, it's fair.
I had to be like, what's a Game Boy? No, I'm better with that. I had to write a book, so therefore I found out what they were. Yeah, no, that's awesome. And the tracker experience that early on, I mean, that's very rare. I mean,
yeah.
Anyway, so that's awesome. That's really cool. What was the next sort of step on your journey? You were already making music. Really? How? Like when? 8 years old? 7 years old?
Something around there. Yeah.
Yeah, about the same time I started playing piano. Okay, got it.
Yeah. Just introduced without knowing that you're introduced, because I just saw Game Boy Camera, wanted it, thought it was cool, dove really into it, and then got forward in there. But if keeping moving forward, I had experience with a different type of tracker, like MTV Music Generator on the PlayStation, and was doing things on there, and then figuring out. And I'd always just really been into game music. I realized I really love listening to the soundtracks, however I could listen to them in MIDI format or recording them on tape or something, and then or doing sound tests rather on the Game Boy and then hearing that. But the thing that got me into it specifically was I remember playing God of War 3 on the PlayStation and unlocking this behind the scenes video. And I saw these composers doing these interviews, and they were saying there was a lot of freedom in terms of what you wanted to do with the music style. And so I had been writing music already since when I started doing computer type of music. It was in 2001. So by the time I came across this video, it was probably around 2009, 2010.
Okay.
And
that's like PS3 time period, basically.
Yeah. And so that was, I unlocked this video, and it said, hey, this is, I think it was Gerard Marino who was doing the interview with Ron Fish, and said we could, do however style and things that we want to do. And I'm thinking, well, my style is really niche and all over the place. And everyone for the past 9 years or 7 years have been saying my music sounds like game music. And so I decided, well, wait, this is a career? You can actually do this as a career? And I was thinking, if my sound is already like this, why not pursue it? So I found out about GDC, thought I needed a lot of money to attend, and I didn't, but made my own demo and put it up on YouTube, which is still on my YouTube to this day, and recorded the output of the PlayStation and recorded a Gran Turismo, and placed my own music that I was doing from that 7 years with it to see like how it fit, and it did. And then from there, I decided, okay, I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to compete at a level of game composition, because I had played alto saxophone in middle school, and I was in the choir in 6th and 7th grade, an advanced band. So I already had some musical type of background, but I needed to get solid. So in 2009, I went back to school and started my composition degree. And I decided that when I was going to school, I didn't want to wait to get into game audio. So I bought this book called The Complete Guide to Game Audio by Aaron Marks, second
I know
edition.
about that. Yeah, it's the one that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And then read half of the book. I got so excited, really realizing that I could start right away. And I'm glad that I had looked it up and did the research. And when I did that, I went online to a forum and posted my music. And then I didn't hear back from like one or two developers, but I heard back from one. I wrote a pitch from my music, and then I wrote an extra demo of the music because they said it was a hobby or we weren't doing something. I really wanted to get my leg up because in the book it was saying you need a portfolio to show you could do the work.
Right.
And then I ended up getting the gig, and it was my first paid gig called Electron Flux, which this month marks the 10-year anniversary.
Wow, that's awesome. Wow. So that's and you got paid for that gig
I
essentially.
got paid and it shipped. Yeah.
Oh, and it shipped.
Shipped. Yep. I got paid and it shipped.
Yeah. I'm
still on the store today.
I'm well aware of the left half of that. Anyway, yeah. So yeah, excellent. That's fantastic. That's a great. And had you been at GDC by that point, or you were just interacting with people online, basically?
No, I had not been at GDC yet, and neither GameSoundCon either. I had just figured out gamedev.forum.
Yeah, so your first GDC was all like maybe like you said right after the book, like the book I wrote or whatever.
Yeah.
Right, essentially. Right. Okay, got it. Wow, that's fantastic. So yeah, that's really cool. I was kind of curious. Were there meetups or anything like that at the time of in terms of LA? Like game developer meetups and stuff like that.
That I didn't. What did I? I think there was Meetup.com, and
because I'm thinking LA. The problem is that LA is like 40 suburbs connected by a 40-minute drive.
Yeah, and everyone always wants to have the meetups in the same centralized area.
Yeah,
they don't want to be out in the opposite area.
Yeah, where were you? Where were you in LA?
I was in Moore Park.
Oh crap! Okay, I see.
Yeah, I was in Agora Hills, and I was in Moore Park after that. So around this time when I was getting started.
So I'm kind of curious. So I see the thing about the AA and music theory and composition. And where was this that you did? Was it all Cal State Northridge, or was this?
So
Moore Park College.
Moore Park College was there, and then before then I was at Los Angeles Recording School, then I went to Moore Park College, and then I went to Cal State Northridge.
Got it. Does that mean you have 2 AAs and a BM?
It means I have. Yes, that is correct.
Yes, got it. Okay, got it. Because I'm looking at it a little bit. All right. So the thing that I'm thinking about is the so when you were at those places, was there knowledge or awareness of the fact that video games were a thing or anything like that, or was this more like, okay, we're just going to learn how to do the music and everyone just wants to make beats and stuff like that,
Yeah, pretty much the latter. No one. I was on my own path. It was a very solo path, and people really weren't understanding what I was doing. But when I was in Moore Park College, I had shipped Electron Flux. I was shipping Qubit Climber. And so I had a soundtrack that was physical that I already had put out. By this time, I'm the conductor's assistant, the first conductor's assistant of the Moore Park Symphony Orchestra in his 20 years of creating it. So I had already been doing things. By the time I was at Cal State Northridge, I was nominated for the I Can't Escape Darkness score.
Wow, that's amazing. So the thing is that so I'm kind of curious then. At what point did you start? I guess this would probably be in music theory and composition at Moore Park, I'm guessing.
Yes, I can tell you.
This would be when you're writing music at that point, like actually like writing notes on a...
Yeah, taking the test, doing figure bass, 4-part harmony, counterpoint.
Fugues and shit like that.
Yeah, fugues, yeah. I had a revelation with the fugue. With the Pokemon bicycle theme was a 3-part fugue, and I had so I'm relating because I'm learning and I'm putting things together.
It's so insane that it's like because my background is more of like, okay, well that's like Mahler or whatever like that, and you're like, that's just like Koji Kondo did and blah blah blah, And it's true because like the more we go forward, the more we get people like you who literally that's their first actual exposure to music is in games,
Right.
And that sort of thing. I think that's just an interesting juxtaposition, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's fascinating, man. So let me think then. Okay, so Right. So then you just keep on going, and you go. Oh, so give us the next step at that point. After what your first games get published or whatever.
Yeah. So by I think the first conference I had attended was GameSoundCon, and I remember being very excited. I had read a little bit past half the book. I've seen people in the book, so now I'm able to put faces to names. And when I show up and I see Alexander Brandon and see a couple other people,
Right.
and I'm thinking like, wow, these people are here and they don't have bodyguards. It was a revelation like
That's
no other.
hilarious. I
I'm like,
love
oh
that.
my god, that's Tyler Pearsall, and just it was really, it was just something so enlightening and just rejuvenating on another
Yeah, and then,
level.
and then you find out that they're not like ivory tower people. They're just like normal people, like you
Yeah,
could just
there's
have a
normal. Some
conversation.
of them. Some of
Well,
them.
yes, I there are certain personalities. We will not
Yes.
mention names because
Yes.
that doesn't happen on this podcast. Um,
No. But yeah, it's going there and just meeting folks, and then learning about, oh, you got to go to GDC next, and that's the next step, and then figuring out how to get up there.
Got it. So
And really,
GameSoundCon was in LA at that time as well.
it was
Because
it
sometimes they
was
went back and forth between doing it around, AES oftentimes
mm,
or whatever in the Bay Area. Like I definitely know one time they at least did it at Paramount.
yeah, this was at the Los Angeles Convention Center.
Okay.
It's the
So
only time I think it was there, and that was my first one that GameStone was there, and then it moved to the Millennium Biltmore Hotel.
right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. So that's cool. So that's excellent. Yeah. That's awesome. You get to meet all your heroes, and and geek out over games because like everyone else is just as excited about games as you are, essentially.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's an awesome thing. What else? So then what happened after that, basically? So you got to GDC, or sorry, GameSoundCon, and then what happened after that?
Yeah, GameSoundCon, GDC. Really, what my goal was to build my portfolio as fast as I possibly could,
Right.
because I wanted to get to a AAA title,
Right.
and wanted to see what that experience was like. And so I realized that without games, you can't really show your best work. So I was always participating in game jams. That's how most of the games actually
Now,
was started, from where I was working with
I'm
Fancy
curious
Fish.
how
Yeah,
you found out about doing game jams. Did you find that out from GameSoundCon, or did you find that out from just hanging around people, or what was the deal?
basic research and homework. I just
Okay.
get so curious. Recently, what I usually been saying is, so my father gave me some advice when I was 8 or 9 years old, and he said, Chase, if you play video games, like if you apply yourself in life how you play these video games, you'll be great. And it
Oh,
clicked.
yeah.
So games have side quests, they have main quests. And so what my mind has done is mostly the research was the side questing to get through, picking up the tools and things that are necessary to get to the main quest. The main quest is to have the sustainability and the notoriety that you want to kind of build for yourself, to have your main goals. If I want to score AAA games, or if I want to work in games overall and do great work for the industry. And so the research for game jams just came about. And this time's particularly by being on the game dev forum that I had learned about. I did more digging, and then I found out about game jams. I found about one game a month at this time. This is probably around like 2011, 2012. And one game a month was a reoccurring game jam thing that you pair up with some developers that needed whatever art or programming or music, and
Mhm.
you put out a game in a month. And that was the goal. I was like, perfect. I need this is the best way to build
Yeah,
a portfolio.
that's a very generous game jam, comparatively speaking, to the ones
Yeah.
that I've been in. But yeah, that's a great exposure because I mean, like you've got a month. That means you can actually polish a little bit, right?
Yes, exactly.
Which is really, really, very, very cool. Curious, what's the game dev forum that you were on? That yeah, I was kind of curious about that. What was the game dev forum you were on?
GameDev.net, which doesn't exist anymore, but maybe Wayback Machine will be able to kind of get some folks some
Yeah.
small glimpses.
I was just kind of curious about that, like, because I'm always curious about how people find it, that kind of, because I found out about it by just going to meetups, and then someone say, "Hey,
Mm.
are you going to the such and such game jam?" And I'd be like, "What's a game jam?" Kind of thing. And that's when, that's when someone mentioned what it was.
Yeah.
And
And
then
then
I
it went crazy. And then I started doing Game Boy Jam because I had the Game Boy, and I was thinking like, oh, I can learn in the style again and refine it and do better, and then other
yeah, yeah,
game
yeah,
jams and all that stuff.
yeah. That's awesome. That's fantastic. So you started doing lots more game jams, and
Mhm.
and I'm gonna bet, based on the amount of things that I've just started seeing here in the bio, that probably one of the game jam games got recognized here and there, in terms of like, hey, this is awesome music or whatever like that. I was just kind of curious if that happened, because I would see that in Gama Sutra or stuff like that. Did you
Yeah,
get them?
so some games turned into bigger projects. So I Can't Escape was the first game jam, and then it turned into a game, and then I Can't Escape Darkness was not a game jam. It was because I Can't Escape did so well, we decided to do the full project for the sequel.
Oh.
And then that was that. But the most recent one that was a game jam that got some notoriety was Aztec Ride. That's the one I
Right,
did in
and I liked
2020.
I really liked the piece that you did for that, and showing a little bit of the gameplay and everything like that. So I actually used that in a music course that I
Oh,
wrote for OSU, because I thought it would be a nice clip and everything like that.
thank you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's really cool. Um, so I think, um, yeah. Let me just see. So you're working your way up to the AAA now. Are you still? Is that still the aspirational goal at this point in time? Because
Mhm.
some people kind of like, kind of maybe did that for a little while and then realized that that goal was really maybe just, more of a pain in the ass than they thought, and that it was actually more interesting to work.
Yeah,
Like in other words, they actually had more musical freedom. Because I think the thing is that I'm not 100% sure that you have as much musical freedom as you did back when you were talking to those people back in the past, and they were saying, yeah, hey, you could do whatever you want for, and they'll be cool with it, kind of thing. Because I was thinking to myself that, like, at least I've talked to some composers who say, I like composing for indie games because it gives me more freedom, because they're going to like be more adventurous with the music. They're going to
yeah,
be more interested in and more pliable. In other words, potentially more responsive to saying, hey, I'd like to use middleware. Hey, I'd like to use this. Hey, I'd like to use that, that
yeah.
kind of thing. Um, so yeah, I was just kind of curious. So far, though, I mean, your
It,
your goal is to still be like, say, do the next Breath of the Wild kind of thing or whatever.
that's a great title to kind of align me with. That would be awesome to do.
Well, you're a
The,
Nintendo boy. I mean, literally. I mean,
I'm actually a Sega
well,
PlayStation guy.
oh, really? Oh, yeah,
E-
that's right. That's right. You were a Nintendo boy, and then yeah, you did, and then you mentioned a bunch of other ones. That's right. So I
yeah,
apologize.
yeah.
I retract that statement. But you like JRPGs and you liked anime, right?
Yes,
Yes. Okay.
yeah.
So
So yeah. I mean, really, what I think the goal was to do like the AAA title, but really, what I think I'm aligning myself is do something that is great in terms of musicality and style and dynamic that will align on a AAA style looking quality game. I think that's the verbiage that really aligns with my mindset now.
yeah, that's awesome, man. Because the thing is it's possible to do that
Mhm.
without the 50, 100, 200 million dollar budget.
Right.
Um, my thing was that when I would hear this music, after a while, I would be like, "Oh yes, it's the epic music. Oh look, and the epic sound effects." And after a while, they started, kind of falling into a very, you know, predictable sort of thing. And then you would see the indie gamers, and they would be doing kind of really interesting stuff. They would be
Yes.
different orchestrations, different cool things with the music, adaptive qualities, and all that other kind of cool stuff. It's one of the reasons I got into Rich Vreeland, Disaster
Yeah.
Artist, and
Yeah.
he's been on previous podcasts here as well. Um,
He's great.
anyway, all right, so I think we're probably at the halfway point. Austin, have we questions for our guest, or should I continue asking questions of my own? Yeah. Well, I've got lots of questions, obviously. So the deal is that what was I gonna say? Um, so you went. So I guess the next thing, you were doing the game jam things.
Yeah.
So that eventually led to GDC, right? Or Or, when was your first GDC was what, 2013?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, got it. Um, and yeah, tell me what that experience was like for you, because that's way, way, way bigger than GameSoundCon for sure.
Yeah. Overwhelming to say the least was the experience, but so it was on another level of GameSoundCon because there was with GameSoundCon, you're meeting your game audio peers. At GDC, you're doing that and then some. You're meeting, maybe you've been following IGN personalities and you might bump into them, or maybe
Yeah.
you're looking for obviously game developers to work with, and there's lots of them there and other people that you can collaborate. And so every person you pass is a possible opportunity.
Right.
And it's so it's just
It's exciting and
great.
it's also overwhelming at the same
Yeah.
time, right?
Yeah,
The kind of
absolutely.
thing.
The best.
What did you find the best thing about being in GDC for you personally, career-wise or whatever, either way?
I have to say, just being there, even if nothing came from it,
Uh-huh.
it was I always called it a business vacation,
Yes.
because you're going there with the mindset of business, but I'm also just hanging out with friends and new friends, people that I had no idea I was going to meet, people who I'm friends with to this day from all over the world.
Yeah.
And that is something you can't take for granted.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. The so th- did any so I'm curious, did any work actually come out of being a GDC, or did you just have the connections that eventually sort of led to work or something
I'll
like
be completely transparent. The only thing that I've seen come out of GDC work wise was 2 gigs out of the 7 years that I have been.
that? Okay.
One that was it seemed like it was going to be a really good opportunity in a gig, but then the developer unfortunately was not forthright with honesty and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Then another one was based off a referral, which came really handy and was very thankful for. And I turned into some solid work
Okay.
for, I think, the pandemic.
Yeah. Cool. But you kept doing the game jams and things like that, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And then and at that point, I would imagine then connections from game jams and hanging out in forums and stuff like that starts leading you to more work, basically, at that point.
Yeah, here and there. Not every game jam as I had wished to turn into something more as the other ones did,
Yeah.
but regardless, having those experiences and you're still meeting people because you never know. It's still fun, and it gives me the opportunity to learn different things.
So I'm kind of curious. So I have definitely my own, opinions about game jams and things like that, as you probably know since you've read the book.
Mhm.
But I wanted to know what your opinion about the value of game jams was for you. What things would you say that were super valuable, or that you would like actually to other people to know about game jams in terms of like what should they be taking away from being at a game jam?
Yeah, I mentioned this in the Global Game Jam keynote, and it's about just knowing how much where your limit is in terms of what you can do and what you can handle. And the biggest thing is learning what you like and what you don't like in terms of the collaboration,
Yeah.
and understanding communicative skills and soft skills, social skills, and things like that too, because things can fall apart and things can become they can get confusing if it's not clear.
Right.
So I think that's very important to mention, because it's people go in and they're like, we're going to make this game. But then if the communication isn't clear, then scope creep happens, which is thinking that you want to build more than what you can within a certain amount of time. And that's why I said learning your limits, learning what you can do.
Yep.
If you think that you want to learn a specific software, take the opportunity to do so, especially this is your opportunity to do so if you're not
Yeah.
conducive with other free time that you may have. And I think it's very important. And then always just be happy knowing that you tried it and that you did it. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be the best game on the planet. Don't go in with high expectations. Just go in to have fun.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for me, the whole thing that I think is super super instructive is it shows what basically a game team's dynamics are going to be,
Yep.
or could possibly be in the
Yep.
real world, working
Yep.
at an actual game company. Because real game companies are formed of people who are teams who are working together on projects and stuff.
Correct.
And so when that team dynamic is working, then you might be able to finish the game. If not, it doesn't. But the problem, the thing that I always find is every game jam experience is instructive. It is helpful to show you what might happen, in the future, in the real world,
Yes.
in the real industry, because these
Yes.
kinds of dynamics relationships happen. Somebody gets tired of somebody deciding to lord it over everybody else, and and they just leave, like, halfway through the jam, and then you don't finish the game. Or,
Yeah.
like you said, scope creep, right? Oh, we're gonna put this in, we're gonna do that, and you're like, you've got 48 hours, dude.
Yeah. I don't know
What
how
can
great
you
you think it
possibly
is, but
do? Like, well, we did all the art. It's like, well, that's great, but there's nothing working now.
yeah.
And many times your team might also have a completely unbalanced thing, like 6 artists, 1 animator, no programmer, and it's like, what are you gonna do? A
Right.
movie? Kind of thing. Yeah, exactly. And you just figure out what you're gonna do. But I always found them to be very instructive, of excellent social mixing situations. Of course, more difficult after COVID and that sort of stuff. But also another opportunity to be able to go. Another thing that I thought was really good is it gives you into, like, how fast can you turn around assets? How fast can you compose a piece of music, 30-second piece of music, and turn it around? Because the usual, I've found, and you can corroborate, 48 hours is usually the deal, right? You go in on Friday, you finish up Sunday, present to everybody else there, right? That kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
But there's different ones, of course. I remember seeing a game jam that was, what do they call it? It was the daylight savings game jam. So like, basically, in the hour that they gained from the game jam, they would do like an hour-long game jam. It's like, okay,
Wow.
that's extreme.
Yeah,
But
they're quite creative now, and there's like Try Jam. You do 1 in 3 hours.
yeah,
I like the weekly ones. I like the ones that give you, like, I participated in the first Metroidvania Jam, and I won. Our team won, and then got high marks for the music for that, and
yeah,
all those
nice.
other things too. So the game jam skills are level up, and they level up fast. And the more you do them, the better and more fun you
Yeah,
have.
that's cool. Um. Anyway, yeah, Austin, just let us know if you get any questions at any point. Thanks. Oh, yeah, cool.
Yeah, I remember writing a blog about this. And let me give me a second to recall what that jam was. I man, what is it? It's I'm for some reason I'm thinking of this Power Rangers type of game that came out about. I'm not. I man, the blog. So I think it was that, because the finding a team as an audio person is actually really difficult on the game jam, believe it or not. And so hopefully you have your portfolio, your work up on SoundCloud. And I just posted my work there, and the developers hit me up on Discord, and they said, like, really love your work. We really would love to jam with you. I said, cool, like, oh, yeah, let's do it. And what turned out to be it, I loved it because the communication was solid. We all got we all were able to kind of get our expectations in order of what we were able to handle schedule wise. I'm going to work on this Thursday, and they would deliver. I'm going to work on this and have this build up, and they would deliver. And so it shows that there was commitment, and with commitment comes excitement, and it turns out to be something actually fun when everything comes together. It doesn't always happen, but it works for me, and I like that. And I think I'm spoiled because my first game jam that I did, 1 game a month, was a developer who was similar. He's committed, he wants it out, he wants to get it done, and we do it and we finish it, and
Right.
that helps the portfolio. So yeah, I
Right.
think that was
How many people are on that, or were on that month-long team, though?
just 3.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Have you ever done? I was kind of curious. Have you ever done Ludum Dare?
I did, and that is the Aztec ride, and that would be the second one that
Oh,
came
yeah, yeah,
together
yeah.
very
So,
well.
and Ludum Dare will get you also a little bit of attention, since it's very well known and has been long running for a while too.
Yeah.
Um, it's interesting. So I'm kind of curious, how many of these game jams that you did were virtual versus physical? In other words, online versus physical.
Yeah, there's way more virtual than physical.
So you've been doing much more virtual game jams than physical game jams.
Yeah, I would say the majority. I would have to say there's only probably 2 game jams I've done physical.
Yeah, okay, got it. Because I did a bunch of physical because I was in the Bay Area where you just throw a rock and you headed a game developer. So I mean,
Yeah.
I think I've done 5 or 6 plus at least like global game jam, of course, every year, um, for several years. I think 5 years running at least. And then other ones as I saw them coming up and stuff like that. But I've probably done like 8 or 9, I think, total. Yeah, so that I think there's a very significant difference between the in-person meeting, socializing, kind of being able to wander around and just kind of insert yourself into things. And
Yeah.
that is a little bit more difficult in the online sort of situation. It's almost like you have to have the relationship with somebody to sort of some extent, which is, I mean, that might explain a little bit of why it took a long, why you weren't necessarily getting responses as much, because having not dealt with the online situation, I don't know what their how they work or whatever as much. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, my first global game jam experience wasn't the best actually. I didn't make any team and I was there the first day with everything. So it was it was unfortunate.
Um,
But I was part of the inaugural Cal State Northridge one when I was in college, and that was a good experience. And then I did another one, my second global game jam, which was out in Ventura County, was another good experience too. So I think those are the 3 that I
and
call.
and those were on site basically.
Yeah, those were the 3 on
Yeah, yeah,
site.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Because Global Jam can has a bunch of on site things.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because and actually what ended up happening. The weird thing is that for me, I ended up my first game jam that I went to was I don't think it was the Global Game Jam. It was a different. It was like a handy. It was like a for assistive, like actually creating like an assistive game jam sort of thing, like for that kind of thing. And the idea was anyway. I arrived on the second day of the jam, which is like kind of like don't do
Yeah.
that. Never do that.
Third day is fine because they really need stuff.
Maybe. Oh boy, in that case, you're really, really, really turning things around fast.
Yeah.
But the thing I always feel is like the first day is the best because that's when they're starting to form their ideas and you can insert yourself into the process a little bit more and that sort of
Yeah.
stuff. I did
Right.
manage to actually. It was interesting because in my case of like the second day arrival, what's interesting about it is that you always think that you're the person that doesn't know anything, right? Oh God, at that time I had barely started learning Unity. So
Mm.
I was like, well, I can't program or anything. I hardly can do any stuff. But this guy had like never, the other person who was in the team had like never used Unity before. And what he was trying to do was actually make physics happen. And
Mm.
it was like, again, it's like one of those things where it's like you can insert yourself in because you happen to have a bit of knowledge that they don't have.
Right.
So I was able to go, Unity already has its own physics system. It already has you just put a rigid body and say use gravity. That's all you have to do. You don't have to make like, oh, okay, I'm going to, position this thing every so often, 32 feet per second, um,
Right.
you know?
Right.
So I found I thought it was a good lesson for me. Like for example, I've even joined like early on, I joined the audio programmers Discord. And again, I don't know anything about audio programming hardly, but then it turned out that like the guy who runs the Discord was like, I'm having problems doing open sound control messaging. And I'm like, oh, it's just string manipulation here, and I was able to like tell him how to do the thing, even though I'm not an audio programmer in any way, shape, or form,
So you know a bit of information that they don't
just
know.
a little bit of information that they don't know. It's very, very useful.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So yeah, that's really interesting. So the thing that I'm kind of curious about is then let's continue on from there into more of a sustained career and things like that, and yeah, continue on and cover your journey.
It's so hard to go from that point forward because now there's a bunch of branches that are happening. right?
Right.
It just really, I guess, depends on the question that you're going to get the
Got it.
response, like, because I took a lot of different paths
Yeah.
to,
Okay. Let me think about this then. What got you into? So you were already doing things like trackers and stuff like that, and sequencing and stuff like that. And think about this.
You know,
Um,
Chase,
yeah.
I'm curious. I see Elias by your name a lot.
mm,
Is that something you use in your workflow like often? And could you just talk a little bit about what you're doing with that?
Yeah. I was
yeah,
thinking about getting to that too, but that's great. That's fine. Go ahead.
yeah. So just 2 years ago, I had started tinkering with Elias about 2017, and I didn't really kind of get it. I saw them at GDC, talked to the folks there, wonderful folks.
Mhm.
And then in 2020, I decided I'm going to just try this out because I became bored with just what was happening in game audio music overall from what I was hearing, especially in the independent scene. So I was thinking, okay, if there's a mantra from Mad Men, it's like, if you don't like what's being said, change the conversation. So I didn't like what was being heard, so I decided to write something different. And with that, I realized I was able to kind of go forward with Elias and just learned it in about 10 minutes. And then that was when that referral from GDC happened, and I pitched for this game, and then I got the gig. And that's what had told me. I said, okay, I understand now that this is the style that's going to work for me to move forward with it. And I really was passionate about it because I love the implementation systems, and I realized I like that by creating different audio systems in I Can Escape Darkness without any middleware alongside the programmer. And I had taken a coding class in high school just for a website HTML. And it turns out that the code for HTML, when I learned in high school, helped me out with the auto system and I Can't Escape Darkness. Fast forward to that, which
Oh,
then
okay, okay, okay,
realized my
okay, okay. Hang
interest.
on. So is this in Unity? Are you doing things in C Sharp?
Just basic old HTML stuff.
But so wait, was I can't what was I can't escape
It
darkness?
was hacks, open AL.
Oh, hacks. Jeez. Okay, got it. So it's like a JavaScript kind of vibe.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Coffee script. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, but it was just enough for me to be able to understand and get things implemented, which I realized I liked having that control to be able to have those things to come in and come out and do what I wanted it to do. And I really enjoyed that.
Was that your first scripting experience?
Within the game,
In game
yes.
audio for
Oh,
game.
actually, no. I was implementing my own music when just before I decided to get into game audio with Mugen. I just remembered
Oh,
I
Mugen.
was
Oh
yeah,
my God. You mean the that's
the
the
character,
the
yeah,
fighting game, right?
Homer Simpson versus Death Star type of stuff. Yeah, I would the music I wrote, I had figured out how to do that. But remember, like I said, my first coding was HTML. I had one best website in the class in that time
Okay.
for HTML. So I had just figured things out on my own, and I really
Yeah.
wanted to figure out what games. But my first implementation, I think, was within Mugen, because you could do the character system, the character map, and I was like, put your own music. I'm like, what? I could put my music in here. So I think, yeah. Sorry, we're talking about Elias, but
No,
I'm
no, no,
trying
no,
to
no,
go
no, no,
back.
no, no. That's the thing. That's actually the kind of the question that I wanted to ask was kind of how did you get into doing it that way? Like, for example, by the time you get to GDC in like 14, 15, 16, that time, 2014, 15, 16, and
Mhm.
GameSoundCon, everybody's talking about Wise and potentially
Yes,
a little bit about Fmod and things like that. You never got into either Wise or Fmod, or did you?
I did. I actually started on Hero Engine, and then
On the
because I was
hero
working
end.
on some game, and then yeah, and I managed to get something working in that surprisingly. And then I was on Fmod Designer, and then I still even have the manual for that. And then
Yeah.
Fmod Designer turned to Fmod Studio, and then I
Yeah.
was working with that. And then I took a Wise crash course at GameSoundCon 1 year.
Okay.
So I've already had tried those.
And you were not you did not respond to those. In other words, you found them to be sort of alien to your way of working, essentially, or your
Yeah,
common.
I learned it, but I didn't learn it well enough to be in love with it.
Got it. But Elias just totally tripped your
It
trigger as
clicked. It
far as
clicked in
like
10 minutes.
that.
It
Like
was,
I got it. I
yep,
got exactly how it's going. Yeah,
yep.
that's good. That's interesting. That's really interesting. I'm kind of curious. Did you do Ableton Live before you did Elias? Because I think there are some similarities between the original Elias, anyway. The Elias, not the 4.0 version. The
You
LT.
asked me about Ableton?
Yeah, I was kind of curious because of the fact that I found like that the layout of the individual columns, and that kind of thing, the idea of those is somewhat similar to an Ableton Live vibe. I never got the Ableton Live, paradigm per
Yeah.
se. but I was just kind of curious if you were on Ableton Live before you, or had used Ableton Live much before you did Elias, or just
When Ableton came to Mac, I think it was Ableton 3. That was my only experience learning that DAW, and it didn't click. I didn't like the workflow and the UI,
Yeah.
so I didn't really participate in that.
Got it. Okay. And so when were you? And you said so. Elias was what, 2018,
2020.
20.
Oh, sorry, my first experience learning into it, it was 2018. Yes, 2017,
Okay,
2018.
yeah, that's about the time I was writing some stuff there.
But I didn't start using it heavily until 2020.
Okay, got it. That's cool. That's really awesome. Yeah, neat. So gosh, yeah, and I always think it's interesting because you like to talk about your journey like a game quest. You know, I think that's a fantastic analogy. You know, like, oh, I have these side quests, and then I have the main quest.
It's a lot of side quests. That's why I said I can't describe the trajectory, because from there it really did start happening like that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, sort of. So, tell me an exciting side quest that you had. Tell me just anyone. Just pick anyone. It doesn't matter whether it's the favorite or anything. It's just whatever the first one comes to your mind.
Yeah, I'd have to say it's going to go back to the Mobotori one, and it's because I worked at Lens Crafters, and I was in Moore Park College studying composition.
Yep.
I had shipped already Electron Flux, and there was a coworker there that said that he knew I was getting the games. We worked in the lab. We were creating glasses, and he said, "Hey, I have an uncle that works in games. I can introduce you to him." And I was thinking, like, what? Actually, this is a really great side quest story now that I think about it. And so I said, okay, sure. Like, you're going to introduce me to your uncle. So he gives me his number. I remember I'm not thinking much of it. And one day the uncle actually calls me, and I'm in the grocery line, and I'm talking to him. He said, yeah, we're looking for an intern for this mobile game company in Culver City. I said, okay. So he's like, well, I'll talk to the owner and see if he's interested. And if you want to come down and do some audio stuff, we can get you started. I was like, okay, that's it. So I'm thinking I've already read half this book, complete guide. I'm thinking this is not what was like. So I go down and I meet the people at the mobile game company, Mobotori, and the co-founder was from Activision, and he had his wife running it, and then was an investor, I think, as well. And so I'm going to use names now. So Ryan is the co-worker at Lens Crafters, and his uncle's name is Phil. And so Phil worked at Mobotori, and then I met everyone else there, and I would go, and then I got the internship, and they were working on this game called Zombie Wonderland 2. They had already shipped Zombie Wonderland. And so the co-founder was telling me, hey, just make audio ear candy. This is what you study these games, go home, play them. And so I'd go home and I'd write some game music, create some sounds, come back every Thursday. I'd go to lunch with the team. They'd be shooting Nerf darts in the thing, and then I would be able to just hang out and pay, my gas is paid for from going all the way. And so I was so excited after competition class on Thursday. It was the best. And one day they were making a new game, and they gave me some art, and they pinned it to the board, and they said, hey, make this music for this thing called Airborne Geezer.
Oh wow! And all they gave you was a piece of artwork.
Was a piece of artwork.
Make a music loop to this.
Make some music for it, and then I wrote some music in an hour. I had already had experience writing about 3 tracks a day, so it was pretty fast. But they didn't know this, so I had my little M Audio Oxygen 8 version 2 MIDI keyboard. Wrote the music, showed it to one of the team members. You already made this? He's like, this is dope. They loved it. They were over the moon about it. They really liked it. They didn't go into any game in the future, but I just remember that experience was just so exciting to be in the space of it and to just feel the energy of what it's like to be around so many other collaborative people.
Yeah. How many people at the game company? Curious.
Maybe 20, if that.
That's not bad. Yeah. Okay. It's a small indie game.
Small, yeah, mobile game studio.
Yeah. Interesting. So, yeah. So, okay. That I like that. And you found, and they were basically just sort of like a throw it over the fence, put it in the game kind of sort of game company. There no middleware, obviously, right?
Yeah, not at not in those times. This is
Yeah,
the
2011.
yeah, $7.99 type of game. Cut the Rope was popular. The
Yeah,
Tremors game. Yeah, this is kind of,
casual games basically.
yeah, very very casual
Mobile
games.
casual. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So this is interesting. So let's see. I'm so. And you're also performing at times too. Apparently, that's the thing.
Yes.
So you're so. Let me talk to me about your performance sort of career. How did that take off? Because you weren't doing performing on a regular basis, I guess, unless that was is a separate thing that you've always been doing as at the same time that you've been doing game audio.
No, I realized that I could perform my own game music once I have a portfolio, so I might as well start doing that and getting other people introduced to the world of video game music in a different way, because a lot of people only hear and see AAA stuff, and a lot of the independent game composers are they're not seen. And so I'm thinking, why shouldn't I not do it? So
Yeah.
IndieCade 2019 was my first performance that I did that, and then I had my music performed at MagWest by the Virtual Video Game Orchestra this year, and hopefully in the future maybe MagFest next year and MagWest again. So we'll see. But also trying to book and do other things and just showcase different styles of video game music that exists.
That's very cool. Yeah. So I'm kind of curious because I've never been to IndieCade or anything like that. Did you find IndieCade to be like how does it compare to say something like a GDC?
Very different. It's on a way smaller scale than GDC. It's very intimate. It's there's a tight, I wouldn't say a tight knit community, but there's a community. And IndieCade has been around. I had been attending that just as probably as long as I would say GDC, and even to the point where I was able to do some of their streams on their site for Twitch and things, and while showing behind the scenes of game music.
Yeah.
But IndieCade is one of those really cool festivals that you can also meet developers and build relationships, make friends, and just be part of the community. It's very cool.
Yeah, sounds awesome, man. Yeah, because I was kind of curious about that, having never done that. And have you done Mag?
So Mag West was my
Mag West, of course.
Mag West last year was my first virtual one, and they had me on as a guest there. And then this year was my first in-person one where I was a guest again and my music was performed. So I think I'm going to be a returning guest. I think it's really cool now. So I'm really excited. It's been a dream of mine to have my music perform at MagFest, and that's what I've been working on for the past 10 years, is to reach that dream.
Now it's just so, now you've also done like as a guest speaker these various things. Well, I'm kind of curious. It also showed in a PAX, so you've done PAX, the Penny Arcade that's in Seattle, right?
Yeah, that was virtual though. That was a 2020 talk.
Got it. Okay.
So I never actually been to PAX West. PAX East, I was there before a ground booth. Just before the pandemic, on the cusp. I mean, GDC had just canceled. it was crazy.
I was teaching at SF State, and they're like, "Guess what? We're not coming in anymore." Oh wow, okay. Everything's gonna be virtual. All right, I guess so. So it also shows that you did Audiokinetic. So I'm kind of curious, since you said what was the thing at Audiokinetic that you did in terms of
that was one of my, I have to say, another career highlight. They reached out to me and was on the panel with Guy Whitmore, Austin Wintry, Elvira Bjorkman, and Lydia from Ubisoft, and Olivier Derivier. And they, because of my audio design stuff, I think I was doing with dynamic music and stuff with Elias, it was the Y Symposium, which the last one I was at was in person when it was in LA. And it was just a joy and an honor to be part of that. And they weren't, what was cool about it is actually the co-founder and the composer, Christopher, who is the co-founder of Elias, he was actually in the Symposium that year too. So they're not playing favorites. They're really just trying to broaden knowledge about dynamic systems and audio and techniques.
Oh, cool. That was very nice. So that was very open of them to not be just like a only wise oriented kind of thing. You know, they were, I mean, generally when, of course, you meet them, they're happy to talk about any kind of middleware at all. But of course, you know, they're focused on their product. Right. But that was, no, that's nice. That's really cool. I've definitely heard them do certain kinds of like more open-ended kinds of stuff. And I was kind of curious if it was one of those sort of things. Yeah, that's excellent. And you've also done a Berklee College of Music thing too.
Yeah, twice now. So the first year virtually was, I got asked last year virtually, and then this year I got to speak with Tom Salta in person,
Oh,
and
great.
that was a phenomenal experience as well.
Yeah. And I know he actually often teaches course. Is he teaching at Berkeley? Is that the deal?
No, as far as I know, Tom is just running his own master class that he
Right.
has
Yeah.
online.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That he does in New York City usually. Yeah. Or whatever like that. Yeah.
some video thing online masterclass or something. I'm not. I think that's what it is.
Well, he's held it in New York City before COVID. I just remember the previous thing, but yeah.
Ah, okay, okay.
And it's like an 8-day workshop or something like that, oftentimes, right? Isn't it? I'm seeing it's like a week long. I seem to remember.
I'm not actually too familiar. I just know of the video versions that him and I had spoke about.
Right. That's it. So that's very cool. So yeah. So I'm kind of curious then. I guess I would ask because we're getting close to the 12 o'clock time.
Sure.
What advice would you give? This is all, I'm sure you've gotten this question a million times. What advice would you give to aspiring game composers who want to get into the business? You know, they've maybe been like you. They played games all their lives. Like everything's like they're like, well, how many side quests do I have to go on to get the main quest? How long do I have to grind before I get to this level or whatever like that? So how would you advise somebody getting into game audio at this point in time?
If you're gonna do it, just do it because you love it, and everything else will mostly work out. It's easier said than done. But you need to just stay true to yourself, keep doing your own thing, and the things that are supposed to align will come. The consistency is king, and you just gotta just continue to do. If you really love it and you're passionate about it,
Yeah.
everything will fall into place mostly. But with that, please continue to just do your homework. Don't feel that because just do your homework. The more homework you do about the people as peers coming in, peers who have been there before, and peers coming after you, and colleagues, it's all super important. And I can't stress that enough because it all comes together in the end of how people and relationships work together and how things will breed better games and better things and techniques and learning and all that growth that can happen and will happen for you.
Yeah. Awesome. So hey, the last question I want to ask before we get out for the day is how did you get to be the chair of the Interactive Audio Special Interest Group? And first of all, how did you first encounter IASig anyway? Was that directly at GDC when you first came in?
Yeah, when I met you and Steve, that was the first interaction of the IASig, and met Kurt, and that was at GDC in 2013. And so as I was doing more homework, I learned of how it came about and Project Barbecue and George Sanger and the history about it. And it's talking about it still kind of gets me because it's been around since I was a child, right? And this time I'm playing Sega Genesis, and all these things are happening, and all these things that are going on. But then I believe I was on a talk for something in 2020, and then one of the steering committee members, Brennan, had asked me if I was interested in being a committee member, and I had accepted. And then from there, I think the previous chair, Kurt, was stepping down, and then I was nominated by Stephen, Kurt, and the others to be chairman, and so I accepted.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. I definitely can say that IASig definitely needs more blood, more people, more people to more new people to come in and give it direction and focus and things like that. Not that it's bad or anything like that, but it's sort of been in a certain bit of sort of stasis to some extent. It's fantastic. It's done amazing work in the past, as you know, like in terms of the 3D the specifications and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But and DLS. I do think they got a little hung up on the whole like opening Wise projects up in Fmod and Fmod projects open in Wise, but whatever. But overall, I still think that the mission is fantastic, and in fact, I got into game audio education because of the fact that Steve was on that steering committee, and he did all that sort of work with the education framework that became the basis of our game audio course and the book and everything like that has followed, including the Game Audio Institute.
Yes.
So anyway, well, I guess we are pretty much at the 1 hour ish mark. So I would like to thank our guest Chase Bethea, and I wish him much wonderful extra, more work and stuff like that, and to continue on the quest, leveling up his character, and getting better and better, and more of a master at game audio and game music, of course, game composing. So you can also follow him on Twitter at Chase Bethea. That's ChaseBethea. And that will be it. And we are Game Audio Institute. We do these kinds of things often. If you want to learn about game audio, different kinds of stuff, we've got actually a thing coming up next couple weeks or so, where we're going to actually start analyzing the music systems of existing games. So look forward to that kind of stuff. And you can join our YouTube. You can subscribe. You can share things like that. And if you want, you can keep funding us on Patreon so we can bring you more of this awesome content. So once again, thanks, Chase, and we will see you in these next ones. Bye.